The hallway wasn't long, but narrow enough that even small changes in its geometry altered the feeling of movement through it, a light bulb flickering at the far end, the way coats leaned against the wall on old hooks, or how dust sometimes gathered in odd diagonal lines as if drawn by invisible draft, and for that reason, when he saw the mirror, it didn't immediately register as wrong. It was tall, thin, propped against the wall at a slight angle near the door to the coat closet, its frame plain and black, the glass clear but not glossy. He walked past it twice before stopping halfway, frowning, looking over his shoulder not because something startled him, but because his brain had hesitated in the processing of space, of memory, of what should or should not be there. He stood in front of it, arms loose at his sides, eyes adjusting not to the image itself but to the presence of it, the way the mirror stood without anchoring, leaning without sliding, as if it had been there long enough to settle into the rhythm of the house. He didn't remember buying it. He didn't remember carrying it in, or ordering it online, or receiving a package. There was no receipt. No brand. No tag. Just a quiet, neutral mirror, and a reflection that was, at first glance, correct. He assumed it had come from somewhere else in the apartment, a leftover from the last tenant, or something he had moved and forgotten, maybe from the bedroom, maybe from the spare room that he no longer used, but when he checked, all the mirrors were where they should be. Nothing missing. Nothing replaced. Still, he didn't remove it. It didn't feel threatening, just unfamiliar, like a new picture hung by someone else, or a rearranged piece of furniture. He left it where it was, convincing himself it had always been there and he'd simply forgotten. But in the days that followed, something about it began to occupy a disproportionate amount of his awareness, not fear, not unease, just a slow, persistent attention, as though the mirror had become the answer to a question he hadn't yet formed. Every time he passed it, he looked. Not because he meant to, but because his body turned slightly, his eyes shifting on their own. His reflection was always there, standing still as it should, but there was a delay in how it resolved, not a visible lag, not a movement out of sync, but a feeling that the reflection was already looking before he arrived. He stopped thinking of it as a mirror in the usual sense, not because it had changed physically, not because the image inside was visibly wrong, but because over time the act of passing by it began to feel like an interaction rather than an observation, as if the glass no longer simply reflected but responded, not with movement, not with sound, but with the kind of silent attentiveness that only grows more precise the less it is acknowledged. Each day, he told himself it was fine, just a mirror, just a thing, but each day, he also found new reasons to glance into it, not to check his appearance, but to confirm that everything was still in place. His face. His body. The wall behind him. The hallway. The door. The frame. He began testing it, casually at first, shifting his posture suddenly, stepping backward quickly, looking away and then back with abrupt intent, trying to catch some lag, some flaw in the mechanics of light, but the image always followed, always matched, always behaved, and yet that lingering suspicion never left him, that there was something in the glass that didn't require sight to remain connected to him. It wasn't fear in the traditional sense, it was a density, a kind of atmospheric pressure that seemed to gather each time he stood too close or lingered too long, as if something behind the glass was growing accustomed to his timing, his pacing, his breath. One evening, long after sunset, when the hallway was lit only by the faint spill of light from the kitchen, he walked past it without intending to look, eyes forward, body tired, but something made him stop mid-step, like the air had thickened just slightly around his legs. He turned, slowly, and for a split second he could have sworn that the reflection wasn't there. Not wrong. Not distorted. Just absent. As if the surface had decided, in that exact moment, not to produce him. He blinked. Looked again. His image was there. Perfectly still. Perfectly normal. But he no longer felt sure that it was waiting for him to arrive before appearing. That night he covered the mirror with a blanket. Not out of fear, but out of exhaustion, a need to reclaim that part of the hallway as neutral space, not a negotiation. He felt foolish doing it, almost embarrassed, but when he stepped back and the hallway looked blank again, quiet, inert, he exhaled. Slept better. Woke slower. Forgot it briefly. The blanket fell off during the night. In the morning it lay in a folded heap beside the mirror, not crumpled, not dragged, but placed, folded, with corners aligned, as if someone had removed it gently, with both hands, and set it down with care. He didn't touch it. He stopped using the hallway altogether, entered the apartment through the back door, used the long route through the kitchen, avoided walking past that narrow stretch of floor where the light always seemed slightly too flat. But even then, even without looking, he could feel it, the sense that something in the house had shifted from stillness to awareness, not dramatic, not visible, but steady, the way breath in a closed room can start to feel heavier when it doesn't belong to you. He moved the mirror, finally, not far, just down the hall to the end, where the coat rack stood. He didn't want to, but the avoidance had become absurd, and the idea that a mirror could dictate his path through his own home had begun to feel like surrender. He lifted it, heavy, colder than expected, and leaned it against the far wall. Then he left. Didn't look at it. Didn't speak.